Hello and welcome to this, the last edition of Elvenhome for 2020. Just a quick introduction because we've got plenty to get through. I show you the completion of the work on the pub, the work of building the hard standing for the steam depot, and also the starting of the work of ballasting around there, finally screwing my courage to put some ballast around all that point work. And at the end of the video, I take a look at what's been achieved on the layout throughout 2020. So let's go back a few weeks now to when I started the work of the pub. Time to bring you up to date with what the work that's been going on with the pub, which as you can see is nearly finished. I'd completed this the last time you saw it. It's been given a little bit more paint in places and is nearly ready to be stuck on. The only thing that needs to be done now is to put some glazing in the windows, which I nearly forgot before I stuck it on. But that needs to be done, so there's nothing much more there. You'll recall that I wanted to create the roof section so that it could be withdrawn, or taken out rather, in case I need to change the lights in the main part of the pub. And I have successfully created my roof section. Here you see the underside, to ensure that this is strong enough and that these walls don't bend in. To do that, I created copies of the internal wall at the end wall so that it was an exact match, and then built the frame, which sits in about 5mm from each end wall, so that it's not squeezing up too tight. Then I obviously put the roof on the top, and this is using some of the Redutex slate, the same slates as we used on the Petite Properties low relief buildings, so there's a similarity. I was so excited at having built the roof and put it all on that I then remembered that I needed some chimneys, and I hadn't cut any holes in the chimney to take breasts in the normal way you would, which would be to attach them on the inside of this card and poke up through, which left me the problem of building the chimney breasts, and particularly given the problem in that I need them to be the right angle to sit on top, because they were going to have to sit on top now. The way I overcame that in the end was to use two pieces. I had to buy some more because I'd used it up. This is 3.2mm square strip styrene. If I bring it into shot, that would be even better. And essentially, having made my template to be able to cut the walls, I knew what the angle was from that template, and I was able to cut in one piece at the right angle, which immediately gave me another piece at the right angle, so that was then cut off to be level, and the two pieces of strip styrene was stuck together, immediately giving me the right angle to sit over the top of the roof. That was wrapped in some, I think that's the Scale Scenes archway kit or viaduct kit, but it's a blue brick essentially. And I had left over some of the chimney pots from the Scale Scenes, from the Petite Properties kits. So I put a strip of 3.2mm strip styrene on the top, drilled 2 holes to be able to drop the chimney pots in, and lo and behold, I had my 2 chimney breasts with their pots, and they've just been stuck on the top, and they work a treat. The barge boards at the end were, again, because I now knew this one angle, it was fairly straightforward business to create the barge boards. And the barge boards, as you will see, make sure I have go right to right. So that sits into the roof, and that now sits happily down and in place. I'm deliberately only showing you the back because I did some work on the front as well. You'll see that the windows have gone in at the back, and I've used the diffusing film from Just Plug to cover them in. If there's any light bleed going up there, that means it won't be a problem. You won't be able to see in here about what's going on. I don't think I'll get any light bleed, and I'll talk a little bit more about the work done inside just to allow me to put the lights in. And the front of the pub is now pretty much completely complete, because the Golden Perch now has its sign. The main sign has gone in, and I'll show you the post the other side. There's an awning above the door, the step you saw before, and the guttering and downpipe have gone in as well. Just to help, I just need to secure that down a bit better. That's it, sitting down a bit better, so that sits down. Hold on a moment, I haven't got that quite right. There we go. That sits down on the roof, and that the front of the pub is complete now, and I'm really pleased with how that looks. And I think we will see actually quite a bit once we get this thing lit up. So if I just take the roof off again very briefly to show you the work. I'd already stuck this piece of card in, as I mentioned. What I didn't mention, I don't think I can get you to see it, on the other side of this bit of card has been stuck some 2mm thick styrene card, which I have to tell you took the devil's own job to cut the hole out. But that means that this whole area has been strengthened inside, which will be taking the cables going in and out. I just had a feeling that if I didn't do that, the cables might actually start cutting into the card and causing it to tear over time. The entrance door for the family to get into the flat upstairs has gone on. You'll notice the rather nifty approach of having it protruding from the side of the building. This is because I completely forgot to cut the door portal when I built the sidewall. And as you'll recall, there's all sorts of internal stuff in here. There was no way I was going to try and cut a door post here. So instead, I created this frame, which is actually the top piece is I'm pretty sure it's a 0.5mm thick piece, which is 2.5mm across, and then underneath it is a piece that's 0.5mm thick but only 2mm across. And what that gave me inside was a ledge into which that door then sat. So the door sits a little way away from the wall, and the frame sits away from the wall, so it's not too flat. And then built a little step, which you can see there, which goes underneath, and that's stuck the door on the outside to get round the fact that I'd completely forgotten to cut the door in the first place. The lights are the last thing that I need to do. One light will feed up through here and then go into that hole. I may put a plastic block or something here that I can attach the light to in some way so it doesn't move up and down. That one is more straightforward because I just need to poke it through the hole, and I think the tension on the wire will stop it from moving. And then the last thing to show you at the back is the post that I mentioned before, which is stuck to the inner wall, and this is then stuck into the post. So that's going into a nice depth, which will stop any droop, because there's nothing worse than a droopy sign. So the last thing I've got to do with the pub is to really, I think, do the lighting, attach this back wall, which goes over here. And then I was originally going to use some 4, was this 3.2? I think this is 3.2, maybe 4mm to put that in there to go over the join. I'm going to paint up some that's only 2mm wide. I think that just looks a bit big. It's fine sitting up the top there, but I think as the strip that would come down here, it just looks a bit big to me. So I'll have a look and see if something a bit thinner might look better. So the next time you see the pub, I hope I will be able to show it to you with its lighting rig in as well. So we can see whether all this internal work has been of any use at all, other than the great pleasure of doing it. So I'll come back later in this video and show you the pub completely finished. Well, here we are, Christmas Eve, and I'm about 2 weeks behind where I wanted to be on this part of the layout, but other things have intervened, quite apart from completing the pub, but other things have intervened to stop me. But nonetheless, as we're coming up to tier 4 in Scotland, I'll have plenty of time to work on this over the next few weeks. I thought what I would do is just show you where I've got to before I start putting on the final bit of the Redutex. The cardboard has gone down now for the whole of the layout, so you will now, that's essentially, it's slightly bigger of course because the engine shed will be slightly narrower, but that is essentially the footprint of the engine shed. So completing this bit of work now gives me the dimensions for the engine shed, so I can get on and start thinking about designing that. This line I think I already had in place, and I had this one in place as well. I've just biffed the buffers there. This has gone in since you last saw, and I think that card was there, but these cards were put in yesterday. And I've just begun to start to put the Redutex down on the piece that will go at the end. If I put this here, this piece sits in here to provide a neat end for each of the lines. I've decided to remove the buffers from these lines. These are in a building which goes to a wall, and I don't think they would put buffers in because it would take up much needed space. And on the whole, they would expect people not to drive through the end wall. Certainly the running shed and the other sheds that I've seen and been in, I don't recall there being a full set of buffer stops. There might be a small, perhaps a couple of stacked sleepers or something, but I don't think there'd be buffer stops because nothing should be moving at any speed anywhere along this part of the shed. So I'll get that bit stuck in, and then I will complete the work here, and that will then complete the hard standing. At the moment I've left it unpainted. Almost certainly I'm going to go over this with something because it really wouldn't look that clean. And then I need to make my mind up about how I'm going to get the grading of the ballast between around here, which is going to be the dark ballast. There's no question about that. This is going to be a dirty area. That I think might be a mixture of the two. Need to straighten those up. They've moved. Very kind of them. They're meant to be glued down. This line here I think will be a mixture of the two before we get to the cleaner ballast for the main running lines. I'm not going to go, I was originally going to try and go all the way up to the, if I move up here, all the way up to the coal stage, but I still haven't fixed in my mind the entry, and until I do that I don't think I can get very far. So I think the answer is to bring the ballast probably as far as the turntable. I haven't made up my mind whether I'm going to put any hard standing here or just ballast that within the shed, and probably bring the ballast along to these lines that are running this way, and that, if I can get that completed in the next 2 or 3 weeks, will be enough for the ballasting and the scenic work there before I settle for myself what the entry to the depot is going to look like at that end. I've had various ideas over time and none of them sit well with me, so I think I may need to scratch build the entry door or the entry gate at some point, but the engine shed comes first. So that just brings you up where I am. There will be one more in this video just to show you where I get to once I've got, I hope, all the hard standing done and the first part of the ballasting, bringing the ballasting down to the start of the hard standing. Well, here you can see the completed pub with the lights on. I won't formally put it into position just at the moment because it's all got to be landscaped around there, and when I do I'll probably have to lift this board off at that point to do all the wiring underneath. But the pub is now completed. I finished off putting on the boarding at the sides. In the end I decided to go with the wider boarding, and if I turn it all the way around you will see the light as I wanted it to do to coming through here. Earlier, before I took these shots, I did some with the lights completely off just to get an idea of what can you actually see, and I'll put that up while I'm talking now so that you'll see a clip certainly looking at the front, looking from the side behind the bowler that's bowling, and then also looking in from the back where the bowler's bowling. And I'm actually really pleased. I think you can see far more than I expected. I've never really done much in the way of internal work. I did some on the fire station, which was just basically making the beds, as you'll recall. There was that one section in the hotel, which was the people sitting and waiting in the lobby, which you really can't see very well because that's at right angles to the normal point of view. This pub, however, will be facing you in this way, and you can see in really quite well. So I'm quite pleased that all the time and effort spent in getting the ground floor sorted has really repaid things. I don't have any light bleed from the walls and the rest. All of the precautions that I made to stop that has worked really well. And I'm very pleased with the outcome. So that completes now all the work on the pub. Now let's go and have a look at the work that's been going on in relation to the hard standing and ballasting. As you can see, I've completed the hard standing and begun the task of the ballasting. And I'll talk a little bit more about the ballasting in just a moment. I've put the original Redotex, that's the colour that it originally came. It was easy enough to put on in terms of the straight pieces. I mean, that's really not too difficult. The pieces in between the tracks were originally, I was going to use 1mm styrene sheet cut to size, but in the end I used the 0.75mm just to make sure the centre was below the level of the tracks, because I did have one or two problems with this one, which I solved, but I thought just make sure that's a little bit set below. Once I'd fitted these, I did have to go with a scalpel in places and make sure that it didn't butt up or come over the top of the rail head, which just needed a little bit of trimming in places. I treated the top, first of all, with I think it's dark grey enamel wash, Humbrol wash, which did a good job, and then wiped it off. So that obviously sank below the level of the heads of the pavings. And then just went at it with various types of weathering powders. And in fact, I think I mixed together smoke and rust to try to get a feel of that kind of ashy colour that you get. And I think that came out, I was quite pleased with that. So that might find itself being used a bit more. The most difficult bit was obviously getting this curved section here. And that was a case of cutting out a piece of plastic that was entirely square, using my template to give me the width between the tracks, and then it was a case of just cutting it down and filing it down until it fitted nicely in the track. All of those lines have been tested, all of them work, both with tender and tank engines, so I'm really pleased with that. That's come out really well. It has left me with a question, though, to which I would be interested in your views. My original intention was to replicate the two engine sheds that sit here, one of which goes to about here and another one goes to about there. But I'm wondering about that now, whether it might not be better to have one engine shed that is square across here. So this is an open area, because I think, for example, I could put some water cranes and various bits and pieces here, which would make that area look rather better. Because this is for minor works in here, and I just wonder. So I'd be interested in your view, whether I should actually just have an engine shed that comes along here. And I think one commentator did say a little while ago that they preferred it when there was more to see in the front here. So let me know your views, because I'm swithering at the moment between building again the original shape as I was going to do, or going for actually something that is squarer and shorter and sits across those tracks rather better. So that's your New Year's question for you. The ballasting has been started. If I come down here, you can see the completely light grey ballast that's gone on. That's gone on quite happily, and that's been ballasted all the way up to the buffer stop, so that line's done. at the back, I started here with a mix of 50% of the light ballast and 50% of the dark. And then as we come to here, I've switched it to 2/3 of the dark and 1/3 of the light ballast. And I'm happy with that. I think if I'd have used all dark, it wouldn't have looked right. But that has a beginning to give me an idea of it being messy. And what I'll be doing is putting probably some of the Javis various scatters that they've got to fill up the gaps between the ballast, because I don't think this would all be ballast. Some of it wouldn't need to be ballast. You wouldn't need ballast here. And you would need some ground that they could walk on that might be a bit firmer underfoot than the loose ballast. The bits to be done are, I think here again I will do a 50-50 mix, but then from here onwards it's going to be the light ballast, because I think these are the lines away from the shed. You would expect them to be closer to the main running line colour. They wouldn't get so much dirt and grime over them. And that really is where I got to in doing all the ballasting. So with that, let's end this section and go on to the final section of this video. It seemed a good idea to me to end the year by just taking a look at what's been achieved on the layout over the whole of the year. And it was surprising when I went back through all the videos, which I'm not going to sample each and every one of the 26, this being the 26th videos that I put out this year. And you forget, because you live with the layout the whole time, just how much has been done through the year. But just sort of picking out the highlights of the year, really. Starting up at Grey Havens, which you can see just below, there's been a number of changes in and around Grey Havens. The first was that light came to Grey Havens, and I've been really pleased with the lights that I put up from the station to the church. Of course, the church itself underwent a major makeover, and I'm really pleased with the Petite Properties church kit and how it's gone into the churchyard, and it looks just so much better than the Metcalfe church, which is not a bad kit, but the Petite Properties one really is very good indeed. The scenic work that I'd been promising to do between the fence and the cliff edge was completed up at Grey Havens as well. So this area, considering that I thought it was finished and I would never come back to, has had quite a bit of work on it in the year. You've seen the work that I've been doing, which I've just been talking about, on the hard standing and starting the work of ballasting the track and doing the scenic work around what will be the depot, which I'll complete, I hope, in the next couple of weeks. Now that I've finally got my courage up to ballast around double slips and things, I hope to be able to complete that pretty smartly now. Going a bit further on, of course, the coaling stage came to Elvenhome this year. That was put in, and well, not the coaling stage, the incline to the coaling stage. It was finally fitted into its final place. A new turntable went in, having screwed up the old one so that it didn't work, which gave me the opportunity actually to do a much better job on building the deck and weathering the deck. Chris Inge's ash pit, which he very kindly donated to me, and which I think is a real feature. I really love it. It's a beautiful piece of work by him, and his website, or his channel, which I've mentioned before, Wheezy Palace. I managed finally to source some lights, so lights now light up the War Memorial in the way that I wanted it to do. And I mean, late in the day when there's just the lights on and the War Memorial is there lit, I really enjoy that part of the layout a great deal. Of course, in terms of scratch builds, the church school started the year off as a little idea and turned into a building that I'm really pleased with, and the boiler house, of course, also as an adaptation of the workshop that came with the old Metcalfe engine shed kits. But the biggest change, probably, if I move slightly just so it comes a bit more into view, is up at High Elven, which didn't exist at all at the start of the year. The board has gone in, the work has been done to adapt the new engine shed kit that Metcalfe made to turn it into a train shed with a single platform. I scratch built the signal box to a design of Paul Chapman's from Galgorm Hall. If you've not seen his channel, well worth going to see. The good shed and the engine shed up there are just Metcalfe kits, but they're very good ones. They're newer versions. And of course, my first dipping a toe into the water with Petite Properties kit was for the majority of the kits that make up Station Road, with two in the Greenwood laser kits for the shops. Interesting, taking the image for Station Road, I looked at those shop kits, and one or other of them is going to get a light in, I think. They just look too dark. I need to do something about that. But we'll come back to that in the end. And of course, in High Elven, I had my first attempt at using DCC automation to control the points up there. Unlike all my other points, which are analog, run off a 12 volt, I think it's 12 volt, maybe 14 volt DC supply, those are controlled by a unit under the baseboard. With my Gauge Master controller, I'm not sure it's much easier than using, or better, than using the levers. I think if you had a more computer-based one, I could see the value. I don't think I'm likely to go mad on DCC automation of control of the points. And we've had some new arrivals at Elvenhome. The carriages that you can see going round the layout are behind Mallard at the far end of the layout now are the Thompson Teaks, which were issued by Graham Farish this year. And then I got myself a set of LMS coaches, Stanier coaches, in anticipation, of course, of the 8F coming, but because I also had Royal Scot, which is pulling the Stanier coaches around. And now, just to show you the engines, 4 arrived on the layout this year, one of which was an eBay purchase. The other 3 were all brand new. That's a Ginty, to get a second Ginty in BR Black, and the 2 8Fs. One of them is an 06 LNER, but it's still an 8F basically. And of course the sound, both that's I fitted sound to by just changing the chip, nice and easy with these newer Farish models. And then the Bachmann Collectors Club sound fitted 8F in Crimson Lake. So quite a year, in what has been quite a year for us all. I suspect for many of us, having a railway or watching videos of railways or generally just being involved in model railways has now allowed us to remain sane in what has been a really challenging year for everyone. I can only hope for all of you that we have a much happier and healthier new year, and that the vaccine allows us to begin to return to getting out and about, and eventually, who knows, even meeting up at exhibitions. And with that really brings this video and the year to an end. 26 videos, as I've said. I've enjoyed making all of them. I really do enjoy making the videos. I think in some ways they help spur me on to getting work done. And I enjoy all the comments that I get from you, so if you've got any comments, please do leave them. And of course, if you've liked the video, give it a thumbs up, that's really helpful. And if you've not already subscribed, well, please do subscribe, and it'd be really great to have you along as we start the new year. My intention, subject to other things getting in the way, is to put a video up in 2 weeks on my normal Friday, so it'll be 2 weeks tomorrow, which will be, I think, the 15th of January. But until I do that, have a safe, probably a quite quiet new year. It's going to be very quiet in Edinburgh this year, with no fireworks or anything else. And let's look forward to a much better year for 2021. So with that, that's bye-bye from me. Bye-bye.